He has worked extensively on Jashad Bhasma and its role in management of diabetic neuropathy. He is actively practicing since 2005 as an independent Ayurvedic physician. He is working as a chief physician for different charitable OPDs run by Nanal Foundation in different areas of cities. He has worked with many prestigious organizations as a consulting doctor. Vaidya Ashutosh Nanal sir, along with his wife, Vaidya Esha Nanal ma'am, are currently looking after Nanal Ayurvedic Chikitsalaya and Nanal Research Foundation initiative started by Vaidya Vilas Nanal sir. So I would now like to request sir to please start his session. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. सबका खाना लंच अच्छे से हुआ है. टॉपिक थोड़ा मेरा अलग है. The theory, genesis of neoplasms. आयुर्वेद के हिसाब से हम देखें या कैंसर्स के बारे में ओवरऑल अगर हम थोड़ा सरे यहाँ पे देखें, यहाँ पे बहुत बड़े बड़े तज्ञ लोग जो कैंसर पे काम करते वो मौजूद है, तो फिर भी उनके सामने मेरे विचार मैं रख रहा हूँ. मेरे पिताजी जो गुरु स्वरूप में जब मैंने मेरा BMS या वैद्यकीय शिक्षण शुरुआत किया, उसके बाद गुरु के तौर पे उनका सहवास मुझे मिला और बचपन से पिता के तौर पे मिला, जिनसे बहुत कुछ सीखने के लिए मिला. एक सोच मिली इनसे, एक अलग तरीके से कैसे सोच सकते हैं. पर्टिकुलरली देखा जाए तो चरक के बारे में जो इंटरेक्शन जितना मेरा पिताजी के साथ रहा, उसमें से एक चरक को अलग तरीके से पढ़ना, समझना कि चरक आपसे बात करते हैं, आप जिस लेवल में हो उस लेवल में आपसे साक्षात संवाद चरक से आपका मौजूद होता है. ये सीख मुझे कहीं ना कहीं पिताजी से मिली. तो उनको स्मरण करते हुए मेरा व्याख्यान में शुरुआत करता हूँ. एक चीज यहाँ देख रहे हैं कि शास्त्रम ज्योति प्रकाशार्थम, कि इस चीज का अनुभव मैंने स्वयं प्रत्यक्ष लिया हुआ है. संहिता में विश्वास होना और संहिता को जैसे है वैसे इंटरप्रेट करना या उसकी नित्य व्यवहार में उसको लाना, ये बहुत जरूरी चीज होती है. इससे सबसे बड़ी चीज क्या नहीं होती है, तो आपसे प्रमाद कोई होता नहीं है. क्योंकि वैद्यकीय क्षेत्र में अगर कोई रुग्ण है, जिस दिन मैंने पहले चिकित्सा शुरुआत की, पिताजी ने जब मुझे बोला कि भाई अभी तुम इंडिपेंडेंटली काम देख सकते हो, तो उन्होंने वही चीज बताई कि जो पहले दिन आप प्रिस्क्रिप्शन पेपर पे लिखोगे, दैट शुड बी योर फाइनल प्रिस्क्रिप्शन. उसी से आपका पेशेंट पूरी तरीके से ठीक होना चाहिए. एक हाथ दो चेंजेस करने हैं तो उतना ठीक है, पर जिस दिन तुम हर 2-3 महीने बाद प्रिस्क्रिप्शन चेंज कर रहे हो, उठ के बगल में दूसरी चेयर पे बैठ जाना. द इम्प्लाइड मीनिंग वाज कि द डे 1 पे रुग्ण की संप्राप्ति क्या है, दोष का बल क्या है, दूष्य बल क्या है, अग्नि है, प्रकृति, ये सब विचार करके जो लिखना है वो लिखो. हर बार वो चीजों में बदलाव आ रहा है, ऐसे नहीं है. कि एक वैद्य को प्रमाद मंजूर नहीं है. कहीं पे भी आप देखोगे तो वैद्य से प्रमाद नहीं होना चाहिए. आपको जहां लगे मेरे से ये काम नहीं होगा, आप सिंपली वो केस छोड़ दो या रेफर कर दो, जैसे भी है. प्रमाद हमेशा वर्जनीय होना चाहिए. अब कैंसर, मैलिग्नेंसी, नियोप्लाज्म की इट्स हॉट ट्रेंडिंग टॉपिक हम आजकल देख सकते हैं, क्योंकि डिस्कवरीज बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गई है. क्या हम ऐसे कह सकते हैं कि आज से 50-100 साल पहले तक में भी ग्रंथ आपको अलग अलग शब्द देते हैं. हम इनकी चर्चा आगे करने वाले हैं, सविस्तर रूप से करने वाले हैं. पर कैंसर आज कहीं पे भी किसी रुग्ण का फोन आता है कि सर ये XYZ कैंसर निकला है, पेशेंट ठीक होगा क्या? So cancer is something which spreads a lot of fear, creates bottlenecks. बहुत सारे डेड एंड्स आते हैं कि इसमें कुछ हो सकता है क्या, कैंसर का स्टेज क्या है, ठीक है क्या, मैं कहाँ जाऊँ, मैं क्या करूँ, फिर गाजर का जूस पीने से ठीक होगा कोई बोलता है एलोवेरा लेने से ठीक होगा. एंड देयर आर लॉट ऑफ एनेक्डोटल थिंग्स, गूगल भी बताता है जो जा रहे हैं. सही मायने में कैंसर पे काम अभी तक पूरी तरीके से हो रहा है, पर पूरी तरीके से हुआ है ऐसे नहीं है. देयर इज लॉट ऑफ स्कोप एंड वी कैन एक्चुअली एनहांस एंड लर्न टू actually re-implement the concepts from samhitas, particularly in case of cancer. So cancers is something which creates dilemmas, and uncertainty for sure. It is not that there are not cases or there are not patients who have 100% recover. Yes, there are cases, many cases I have witnessed and I have gone through and happened to witness their treatments and treat many patients where Tata has even certified that there is no evidence of cancer now. But one thing about cancer we need to know that कि जैसे एक अम्लपित्त, like for a patient of अम्लपित्त, if we are prescribing लघु सूतशेखर can technically work for second case of अम्लपित्त, but in cancer it may be or it may not be, or it may be very difficult to evolve a single line protocol that okay, adenocarcinoma, this set of medicines we are prescribing and you are bound to get results provided the patient is at a certain phase or staging of the disease. So let's start with our journey. Neoplasms, a basic word if we say that neoplasms is any kind of growth which indirectly refers to malignancy mostly. The growths are benign as well, so benign neoplasms, malignant neoplasms terms are generally used. Basic thing which modern science or the term cancer which was coined by, I would say, the modern theory or the modern medicine or the oncology is a branch which typically deals with all the cases of malignancies. So what they believe is that abnormal growth is usually forms a mass. Like I would say there are two types of manifestations. One which could be a typical glandular, there are tumors, there is vriddhi, utsed, shot, these can be observed, and other versions are like which are internally or abhyantar margataha. They exhibit the similar symptoms, end culmination is same, they are also called as malignancies, but they don't exhibit typical concept or typical aspect of tumor. Now, my current scenario or current topic of discussion is not different types of malignancies or any differentiation in that. We are taking a bird's eye view of what modern or the current practices of cancer or oncology is involving. So gross classification, few of the types I have considered, there are more than 100 plus types of malignancies. So carcinomas are generally adenocarcinoma, basal cell, squamous cell, transitional cell. So basically the aspect or approach of modern science is to identify a cell which is being particularly under vitiation or which is turning into a malignant one and leaving its nature of being normalcy or normal properties. So the cell which is going to convert in such a form is going to exhibit the same results as a end result, but the ways of proliferation, the ways it will achieve or reach the final culmination, they change. So carcinomas are general set which are basically goes with epithelial cells. Sarcomas are generally, they can be related to other Medadhatu, Mausadhatu, but I'm going to come with a concept later, what we ideally need to do. Leukemias are related to Rasadhatu, Raktadhatu, we can grossly relate them. Lymphomas are again related to Rasadhatu. Myelomas generally go with denser tissues, Majjadhatu, Asthidhatu. This is grossly we can relate them as a primary interpretation. This may not be a direct conclusion. So to summarize with what is the modern aspect of cancer before we go ahead with our thoughts, cancer cells appear through a series of genetic modifications which are generally modern science believes to be carcinogens, which are solely responsible for development of neoplasms. But I have witnessed a number of cases where patient is not even consuming a single piece of body soap mishraya, but he has developed some malignancies or gliomas are there, certain types of tumors are there. So it is not every time, it should not be that any cancer it has to be blamed on particularly on tobacco, gutka. Yes, they are one of the main precipitative factors, but there are other factors which we can, particularly as Ayurvedic physician, we can understand and know them. Like I had a patient of glioma, the tumor was in frontal lobe and it was 55 mm by 60 mm something. It was inoperable for some reasons, and the age of that patient was 20 years. He was a builder. He was used to do gymming and these things regularly, 3 hours of exercise. But the reason behind tumor was that after every exercise meal, he used to consume this bowl of hakka noodles or maybe a big bowl of peanut butter and something like that, just to supply the necessary protein content for his muscle build-up activities. So far in my work, I have identified peanuts, then viruddhahar, if we say banana and milk together particularly, excessive use of methi, as a few of the factors which grossly influence the internal matter or internal system, which finally culminates into a cancer. So modern medicine or science blames or considers carcinogens as the key factors for development of these conditions. Ayurveda can contribute much more knowledge about this if provided and statistically put in a proper manner. These genes can change as per the surrounding environment. They have an innate ability to grow, ability to invade nearby tissue. These words can, in the same manner, they can be found in Samhitas. We will be coming to references later in Gulma Chikitsa and other adhyayas. It's like you will feel with one-to-one translation what they have mentioned there. They have ability to spread, and there's a last factor which is unique with these cells is something called as immortality. Now the most basic patterns of manifestation that, like we saw earlier, or by classified that entities which represent a solid mass or tumor or any type of utsed is there, they can be roughly correlated or interpreted or understood with the concepts which are laid down under the headers of Gulma, Granthi, Arbud, Apache, while there are other manifestations which do not exhibit a utsed or tumor or on a visible periphery of Sharir. They can be more or less, or they should rather be interpreted with the baseline sampraptis of Visarpa, Pedaka and Vidradi. We'll be going through the same. Now I would like to make one thing clear that Tapan sir had delivered a lecture on this topic last year, but the beauty of Ayurveda, like in Rasaviman, if you will say, they mention about Prakriti Samasamavai, Vikruti Visham Samavai. So whatever is Vikruti which needs to be explicitly mentioned or which needs to be documented as common conditions, the Nidanas and their Chikitsa like Atisar, Jwar, Raktapitta, Gulma, they have explicitly mentioned there are adhyayas dedicated to that. But that doesn't mean that you should be perpetually sticking to that terminology, and whatever comes your way, you need to take that thing and fit into some or the other adhyayas or some or the other set of the symptoms, and have try to have a one-to-one correlation every time. So what Charaka says is, Nahi sarva vikaranam namosti dhruvasati. So diseases should rather be identified based on the corpus, what is being involved in, the outcome of the basic samprapti janak material which is getting developed inside the system, that should be understood. The second line is the factors which are vitiating, like in particularly in our tradition, when I started understanding a little bit of Ayurveda, I used to ask my father, he used to have typical diagnosis as Saman Vaigunya. Or there are diagnoses like Hina Manas is a diagnosis, one of the case papers which I reviewed of my grandfather. Then I asked him that, what is Saman Vaigunya? Why aren't you diagnosis as clinically completely either Grani or either Amlapitta or either set of symptoms? So the concept evolved from there was that you need to pinpoint the only fact which is solely responsible for the set of conditions and symptoms what patient is experiencing. The more pinpoint your diagnosis would be, more pinpoint will be your treatment, and you will be likely using lesser number of medicines as compared to what you will go with a classical way. So this is what I believe, that in modern day this age is evolving, the new era is coming, there are a lot of syndromes and blah 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 conditions are going to evolve. Modern stream is going to have them put in a nomenclature, as like in case of COVID, many people tried to fit it in particular type of jwara, ki it is X Sannipat, it is Y Sannipat, but in case of at least in malignancies, we need not stick to correlate that adenocarcinoma is this. Like I gave you a rough correlation some time ago. Sheet of reports or assessing them, that whether it is sarcoma, whether it is myeloma and further things. They will assist you in prognosis or further things of your treatment, whatever you are going to plan. So never try to have a one-to-one correlation thing. Now methodologies to understand. The entire presentation or the topic I have divided in two parts, as I am using particularly these two words as neoplasm as the growths which are a visible impact of a process called as neoplasia. Neoplasia is a process which occurs inside body which gives rise to neoplasm. In Ayurvedic terms, if we say Lakshan and the Samprapti or Jatihi, Agatihi, whatever goes beyond, whatever goes subtly, that can be that has to be understood separately. Presenting symptoms have to be understood separately, and all them have to be understood in the context of particular aspect of Ahar. So we shall be treating or considering two different entities. One entity I would be establishing is something called as corpus, or we can relate it to say arm, but corpus may not have 100% one-to-one correlation or same identity as arm. So I am going to use a term as corpus particularly throughout this presentation. So the modern science distinguishes various cancers based on basic body cells that indulge in the manifestation of disease. We shall be discussing, I mentioned, the corpus provides the fuel for any such disease causing the entities. Like we should take an example of a compressor or any machine, say a liquid filling bottle line, which actually works on a compressor. So compressor is the thing which is giving the necessary pressure or necessary energy build-up for that machine to optimally function. It's not the electricity, it's nothing, but it's the compressor which is building that pressure. So the corpus is an entity which can be very well understood with the principles or concepts of Ayurveda, and which is very necessary to understand, because actually whatever the cells or whatever theories they are built, it somehow strives, or this corpus provides the necessary fuel for growth of these further things within the system. If there won't be any corpus, there won't be any diseases. Kha differs from this, as Kha is a site of action where Vaigunya corpus is going to reach there, percolate there, and disease expression will be there. So Kha let's keep it separate at the moment. Now again, the base entities, if we have to define, neoplasm is an abnormal phenomena. It cannot be directly correlated with natural mechanism of growth. Vriddhi or growth is referred to as different. Like if we go through Samhitas, Vriddhi word is often precedes Abhivriddhi, Parivriddhi, Abhivardhan. So wherever the context growth or Vriddhi Shabda comes with Abhi, a different sort of expression or manifestation is expected by the Samhitakara. And they have to be dealt relevantly as those sides. Wherever he is mentioning word Abhivriddhi, in that context we have to relate that term and interpret it accordingly. So Vriddhi, at gross level, I can say that it can be a logical and prakrut manifestation or karma of Shukra Dhatu. Prajotpatam ya Garbhotpadam is a Sreshta karma of Shukra. But apart from that, it is not that Shukra Dhatu doesn't have any functionalities. In Grahani Chikitsa Adhyaya, if we will see that when they are explaining about, Chakrapani asks that, the student asks that Rasadaraktam, ki there is no color in rasa, how there is implementation of color in Rakta. So in this particular case, they mention that all the dhatus are exhibiting malas and upadhatus except Shukra. So there in Tika what they have mentioned is that Shukra has no mala. There's a stream which believes that Shmashru and Loma are Mala Swarup of Shukra, but it is not so, because what they mention is that Strinam api Shukraha. So Shukra is something which doesn't have Mala, it is only Prasad Bhag of Sardhatus. So the best karma of Shukra is Prajotpatam, while the remaining part or Shukradhara Kala, which is acquiring or which is encompassing or reaching all over the body. So this aspect of Shukra we need to consider while we are trying to understand the normal mechanism of growth. Now growth is something, the corpus we were considering. The corpus is primarily, I will relate it to at this moment to a Prakrut Aharas, because if growth has to take normally and in a much desired way which is beneficial for Swasthya, what they say is Yadannam Dehadatva Jo Balavarnadi Posharkam. So how food is consumed, it is going to generate optimal Aharas which is going to nourish the body tissues, Oj, all the dhatus, regenerate Bala and have a favorable impact on our health, which is required for daily being and living. Now let's understand a natural phenomena of growth. Vriddhi is a basic event and exists right from the stage we are conceived in the womb. So what they say is Shukra Shonit Sanyog. After that, once it is there, the female is called as Garbhini, Sadyogruhita Garbha. Sadyogruhita Garbha exhibits typical symptoms which they have mentioned, and these symptoms, if you will see, they are expressing equally on physical and mental levels. They are exclusively felt by the lady herself. Now, as the time passes, if we see Prathamo Masi Kalalam Jayate, Dvitiye, I have marked these three different words in three different colors. There is reason behind that. At this point, somewhere Sushruta is explaining right at the beginning or conception or synthesis of anything which goes in body, the way here what they have mentioned, Yadi Pindaha Puman, Stri Chet Peshi, Napunsaka Arbudameti. Now these three words, this Arbud word we are not going to link with something in Arbud Vyadi. This Arbud word refers to a specific anatomical form or specific cellular structure which is a 2, 3 or maybe multi-celled entity which is existing in the Garbhasaya that time. So if it has to obtain a shape of a male in future, it has to be Pinda. If it has to manifest or convert into as a female, it will be a Peshi, and if it's an Napunsak, it is Arbud. So somewhere these concepts relate to the development of different malignancies or manifestation of the same samprapti in different types of tissues, that some XYZ, this corpus, again I am repeating the word, ki if it will be expressed in rasa dhatu, it is likely that it will be a sort of like, maybe modern physicians might diagnose it as some Hodgkin's lymphoma or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or depending on the other parameters. So somewhere in Sharirasthan Garbha Nirmiti, Sushruta mentions this at conceptual level, that any manifestation which appears larger than life in a futuristic aspect has a definite difference at the time of its conception or at the time of it comes into existence in this world. So same applies to a Garbha embryo, same applies to every chain in further. Since then, it ever continues till the last breath. Growth is something which never stops. On daily basis, we are regenerating n number of new cells. The cells are being destroyed. That's why we are surviving. It's not the same corpus that what we are born with and same cells are continued. It is always a coordinated effort. Now, why do I say coordinated effort? And is governed by multiple body elements at the same time in simple and complex ways. Now, here we have to give a critical attention to the karmas of all 5 different vayus. Like in Grani, Annamadana karmatu prane koshte prakarshati. Now, let's cut the thing separately. Annam adana karma. I'll even cut the word anna, adana karma. So, wherever there is a requirement or necessity that something has to be brought within the system, something has to be brought inside a cell or inside a srotas, it has to be under the governance of pranavayu. In other words, if I say that if something unwanted, it is going out of a cell, or something unwanted is entering a cell or a srotas, it is because of lack of governance of prana. So there essentially it's the things start with a vikruti of pran. Now pran is an entity only what in Chikitsasana if you say that udalam yojayat urdhvam and prano. So all the 4 manifestation in avarana what they say is prano rakshit chaturbihi. Rest all vayus have to be given their respective directions and they have to be managed. So prana is something which gets very easily afflicted, vitiated by rest of the 4 vayus and dominated. And the function of prana is also very critical. So when we say it's a coordinated effort, so along with prana, udan, saman and vyan and apan, if something has to be, adan has to be done within the system, after this system of adan is done, there are few things which have to be excreted or removed from that particular srotas. This karma is particularly of apan vayu. So wherever this word coordinated emphasizes lot of events and in situ, in chain, if they fail, this coordination is not going to be there. Saman is something which will help you digest or which will help that substance which is inverted, that will be processed in a proper channel and reach to the final culmination. Udan will be something which will be a regenerative thing of all this activity together and impart the necessary bala for all these things to optimally function. So none of them can fall weak or sick or lack in their functionality. So when the growth is normal, it is always coordinated and it is governed by multiple entities. Now why I have mentioned this basic sutra from Charak Samhita. This is in context with Vriddhi. The Vriddhi or growth, what we saw in earlier slide, is governed by certain rules. Now Charaka gives 3 definitions. Sarvada, Sarva Bhavanam, Samanyam, Vriddhi Karanam, Samanyam, Ekatva and Tulyar Tatha Hi Samanyam. There is a categoric difference in all 3 of them and they mention 3 different facets, 3 different aspects of the same phenomena. Sarvada Sarva Bhavanam, when you want to plan something, so you will plan some entity which will be similar to in terms of Dravya Guna and Karma and it will give you the desired impact in terms of whatever activity you are planning or you are developing a new drug, you are synthesizing a drug or new molecule. Samanyam Ekatva, when this particular entity is going to enter the system or your channel, how it is going to perform or how it is going to dissociate in the system, Samanyam Ekatva. So it is going to collect rest of the ingredients which hold a Samanyatva with a substance which has descended in the system and consolidated them at one place so that cumulatively the impact or their action can be manifested well. Tulyar tatha hi samanyam is a mode of action. These are my perceptions, they may differ. Tulyar tatha hi samanyam, when two entities interact with each other, there can be a set of symptoms or there can be a set of properties which hold equalities, and there can be, like we see in sutra ki viruddha guna sanyoge bhuyasa alpam hijiyate. So viruddha guna sanyoge, or when there is an interaction between two molecules, two cells or two entities, there could be a set which would be common at both the ends, and there could be a set which is categorically differentiated with both of them. So logical outcome becomes that the common properties which are there, they are going to be exaggerated, and the properties which are different, so the dominance is going to decide where those properties which are different among them, they will be totally subsided, or these two will retain their individuality and exchanging the difference of properties which are there, and there will be a evolution of totally two new different substances. So this is what we interpret from the basic Samanya Vishesh Siddhanta. Now I have mentioned a couple of words from, these are different sampraptis from, we are going to discuss them word by word, like 2 slides earlier what I mentioned, that neoplasia or the samprapti which actually culminates into different manifestations, as in what we call as neoplasms. So there are different modes and actions, like modern science or modern theories, oncology, what they say is vitiation of a cell and the culmination in a logical pathway progression, which is followed by metastasis, and last stage is death. But in classical text, if we will refer, so initial 3 references I have taken from Gulmanidan. Now what Charaka says there is Vayuhu Mahasroto Anupravishya. Let's break this word in 3 different subwords. Vayu, who is doing? Vayu is processing. Where it is doing, the site of action is Mahasrotos, and how it is doing? Anupravishya. Now Charaka is not saying Pravishya. He could have said that. He is specifically saying Anupravishya. So Anu is what? Anu is something, मैं किसी के बाद जा रहा हूं और मैं जा रहा हूं. So I am entering after something, or I am carrying certain entities or something, I am pushing them and I'll be a second entrant after that. So Anupravishya. So this word has to be carefully studied. And after that what they say is पिंड भाव निर्माण होके वहाँ पे it will form, it will synthesize a gulma and it will culminate then vividan vata prakaran vedanan upajayati muhur adamate spandate, and all the lakshan and symptoms they are mentioned. But the key factor in samprapti is vayuhu mahasroto anupravishya. Mahasroto is, again I would relate the same thing to a subtle level, to a sukshma srotas, ki if this entity or this samprapti is going to take place as a part of entire mahasrotas, the same can logically take place at every minute, every sukshma srotas in our body, until and unless the manifestations are not at such subtle levels. A mahavyadhi or a chronic condition or a fatal condition or asadhya vyadhi, they do not come into existence. So somewhere we need to relate it at both the levels. Secondly, what they have mentioned is taireva tu karshanaihi karshitasya. Now taireva iti hetu, what they are describing, I haven't taken the complete part of sutra, they can be referred at appropriate location. Taireva karshanaihi karshitasya. There are 2 events again, karshanaihi karshitasya. One is doing the karshan and the other is experiencing that activity or that force of karshan. It is relatively simple, that I am pushing a cupboard, so I am exhibiting a force, and the cupboard which is being pushed is exhibiting that force and is indirectly relating or interacting to the force which I am implying. So Taireva Karshanaihi. But in case of cupboard, it is not possible that it will materialistically squeeze. But if we will employ or this concept or apply this concept to the concept of dhatus, that is like rasa, rakta, mausmed, asti, majja, shukra. So act of karshan is going to have individual and deep impact on each of these dhatus from rasa to shukra, which is going to potentially hamper their hamper them dravyataha, gunataha and karmataha, which can be directly seen in different rasa pradosh vyadi, kshayaj vyadi, vriddhi vyadi. We are not going to go there. Now the second thing in Visarpa Chikitsa I would highlight that there is a third mechanism in body which actually transports this corpus or any entities from one location to other location. In Doshagati, what we study is Vyayama Dushmana Staishnat. So these are categorically what they are mentioning, Doshagati, how they get reversed, how they change, and what are Prakrut about that. But in case of Vikruti, in Sampraptis like Visarpa, if all the three sutras what we are going to study here say, so this is another type of Samprapti or basic pathways, or we can relate it to a Samprapti pattern which can potentially transport XYZ entity in body from one place to another relatively and effortlessly. Parisarpanat is again a key lakshan of Visarpa, what they have mentioned in the definition itself. Again the next term comes as Amashayika Deshe Samvartya. So Amashayika Deshe means they are giving you a definite site of expression, that any particular position of Amashaya. Amashaya is again, we are not supposed to confuse it with stomach or anatomical entity of stomach, but Amashaya is both the concept, triangular concept what they have given. So any sort of location in this area, it is likely that Vayu can exhibit its action. They are mentioning again as Samvartya. Samvartya signifies a specific gati. In, for example, if you will go across Charak Samhita, you will find different words for Visheshan of Vayu also, like in Yoni Vapatti, sorry, what they mention is Vatalayaha Samiranaha. So there he is mentioning as Samiranaha. जब वन जिसका ईरण सम है उसे समीरण कहा जाएगा. So समीरण will definitely give you action which is rather precisely controlled. Precisely controls means like if I am going to discharge a liquid at 1 ml per minute, that is a precise control, and उसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा mechanism जो है पीछे control mechanism लगता है. So we need to study these terms very carefully while we are studying samhitas. So samvartya is a avartan kind of gati which can be towards centric, which can be away from the centric, and the impacts can be similarly seen with that. In Visarpa again, the concept which I mentioned some time ago, that Abhyantar Marga, or there are, or this movement of this corpus, when it is within the dhatu, it doesn't express as a utsed or a tumor itself, but when it rather spreads within the tissues, within the systems. So there what he says is Bahir Marga Shritam Sadhyam Asayam Asadhyam Ubhayashritam Sukruchram tu Antarashrayam. So Antarashrayam is internal marga or internal dhatus, internal capabilities or internal structures when they are vitiated or occluded with this samprapti causing corpus. The conditions typically characterized as in, typically I had witnessed in some cases of sarcomas, so wherein you need to have a altogether different approach. Rather this same thing somewhere applies in case of avascular necrosis as well. All these, sorry, I skipped on it. So Rukshoshno, there is other side in again Visarpa, Rukshoshno Kevalo Vayuhu Puranairva Samavrutaha. Now what they say is Rukshoshnehi. He is specifically talking about two gunas of Vayu, Rukshe Ushnaihi Kevalo Vayuhu Puranairva Samahutrataha. Now what happens? Puranairva, it is occupying that particular Avkash, space, Srotas, Vaigunya, whatever we can say, or whatever the target site, target action which is under consideration. Samavrutaha, it is reaching there and it is somewhere blocking the passage or blocking the entry, and it is residing there. So not allowing any entry of any further passage, and its own entry outside the Srotas. Same, what they say is, Pradushto Dushen Dushan Visarpati Yathabalam Pitta Mushnopacharena. So here they are particularly mentioning Vidahi Amla Nishchitam. So this thing we are going to come in a later part of when we will discussing about the corpus. But the concept we need to understand here is that different gatis, different gunas, how do they impact the samprapti so that it finally culminates into specific entities. Now, I have taken an example of Shotha here because personally what I believe is Shotha is the most basic samprapti. In Trishoti Adhyaya, if we say in earlier Adhyaya they mention as Pidaka, and Pidakanugami Shof is there. So Shotha is something which Charka has elaborately explained there. So Shotha is any Vikrut Vriddhi exceeding in normal span of that Avkash. It can exhibit from vast number of properties depending on the inputs it has received for good amount of time frame in the past. This time frame indicates the chronicity of the samprapti. It is not that ki agantu shof, yes, it's there, I had a fall and shoth is there, that is understandable. But I had some dadi right now and next morning there is a swelling, shoth is there, it is not there. So the time frame or the passage of time is mandatory in development of these conditions. These can be of different types, like I have mentioned couple of these symptoms, these paribhasha, unnat, anunnat and everything is mentioned. Soft, mobile, labile and thin membranous. They can be subtle protrusions or stony hard structures. A defined structure with pulsating nature, like in Gulma they say Muhuradamate, reflecting different shades, particularly in case of Pitta, Araktata is there, Tamratva is there, in Kapha, Shvaitya is there, Vat, Shavatva is there. So depending the dosha, they will reflect the any colors. Tendencies to culminate, like in place of Vrana Shot, Ekado Eshot Tito Shrotho, Vrananam Purva Lakshanam, what they say, that when Shot resides at particular site, it is mostly likely that it will culminate into a one, it will burst and then you will have to treat it accordingly. Can engulf and incorporate any internal structures residing in the vicinity. Now this needs to be understood, again this relates itself to the corpus. In a preceding slide what we saw here, that Vidahi Amla Shanaishta Nishchitam. So the kind of ahara patient is going to consume, it is going to produce aharas with those specific gunas or a specific set of properties which is going to exhibit that action on all the dhatus which are in the chain or which are under consideration. So this part we will come to a later part of presentation. Now Shotha Hetu, if we say, then Shotha they have summarized Hetus. So first thing is Ayathavat Prayogat. Panchakarmas, if they are not implemented or done properly, they can give rise to handsome amount of complications in later span of time. Same with Mithya Samsarjan, if Panchakarma is properly done, it has to be followed by a proper Samsarjan Kram. The second Hetu is Atikarshana Irva. Atikarshana is something which we saw earlier in the earlier slide as well. Karshan is a action which can be achieved by two things. It can be a vigorous, where Gati has the dominance and it is going to impact on the all Saumya Bhav Padartha or Samya tissues and leave behind a different kind of entity. So Karshana Irva, Karshan is something which separates the two entities. Like in case of Manthan, what we do is while preparing buttermilk, the curd which is unset curd which we are manthan prakriya we are doing, the butter separates out and the water content leaves behind. So when this separation somewhere starts within the system, it has chances that the separated Drava Gunatmak Bhav Padartha or Drava Gunatmak corpus is logically going to have a different entity or different fate, and the Sandra Bhag which is going to reside behind is going to exhibit or is going to have manifestations in a different way. So Karshan is something which has a separation in this corpus and divides them into two different entities which have their own potential and logical culmination. Holding of Vegavadharan is there, and Udirana doshatvat shofaha pradurbhavanti. Now why I would focus here is, like I said earlier, if there is no corpus, there won't be any manifestation of condition. So Udirana doshatvat, so where there are doshas available in dominance, Udiran can be there. Once Udiran is there, next culmination of disease or clinical conditions can be there. Again, some hetus are summarized here. We are going to skip this slide. We have discussed with Shod. Now, some time of typical manifestations, this is just for your reference with what I mentioned, like Yasya, Shleshma Prakupito, Ashu Sanjana Chofam, Jimamule, Upajimika is there, Kakale, Galashondika is there, Galabaye, Galaganda is there. So these are common manifestations of Shod Samprapti which have been tagged as Galaganda Shod mentioned by Charka. Same ways with Pliha, they have mentioned that Pliha Vruddhi, how does it take place? When Vata manifestations show for in Gulmastan, Gulma development is there. So somewhere from this we can conclude that all sorts of growth or Vruddhi or any manifestations which take place in our system are a resultant of Shot. Shot is a primordial thing which has to be there at some part of Samprapti to initiate the things. Now let's focus on the later part of Vruddhi, like whatever we discussed earlier till now was about Vruddhi or the growth. So how does it achieve? In earlier context we would suggest materialistic intensification can be termed as growth. It can be of any bhav padartha. Now let's understand Vruddhi and try to link it with each and every logical siddhanta or concept what our Granthakaras have mentioned us. So it can be desired, it can be a planned activity like discussed as earlier in Vyadhi, in Bruhan, we need to plan Bruhan Chikitsa, it's a example of that only. The word Vruddhi has three contexts, Prakrut, Aprakrut and Vaikrut. Now I'll be relating Vruddhi, that Vruddhi takes place on Dravya. Now there are now 9 Dravyas mentioned, Prithvi Khadinyatma Malakkalo Dishastha Dravya Sangra. Here, if we will see that in Tikakar particularly says that Atma Kasmat Pradhana Bhuto Abhi Prathamam Na Uktaha. So where in Chika what they have mentioned is Vyadher Arogyadhi Adhikaranataya. So Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu and Akash, they are actual sites of manifestation of any disease or any Samprapti or any Vruddhi. If the material Murta Sharir is not there, nothing is going to take place. So these 5 have been separated. Next entity what remains is their Atma, Manas, Kal and Disha. Atma, as they mentioned, is it is nirvikar, it doesn't interfere in either ways. It just gives the desired and required potential for the task which is to be achieved. Now Vruddhi, relational and contextual. Now in Disha, how do we think about Disha? So it can be a linear pattern, like in Raja Yakshma we say that it exhibits from Prakrut, or Pratimarga it is from Shukra. Expression is there, so it can be a linear pattern, it can be a non-linear pattern. It could be a concentric, it could be a concurrent. Concurrent is if the phenomenon occurs at 2 different places or within 2 different dhatus at the same point of time, it can be a concurrent phenomena. Concentric is towards centric, which Avarta concept which we discussed earlier. Parallel is again same at two different locations but with the same pace. Urdhva, Adha, Tiryak is Urdhva, this particularly in body, if we say we relate it with the reference of Nabi. Urdhva, Adha and Tiryak, like Chaturvimshati Dhamanis are there. Anulom is, I would say, is within the tissue itself, and Pratilom is Anyonya Samsarga, where it is escaping from the system and reaching to some other entity. Vriddhi, we need to relate it with Kal. Macrocosm is Adan and Visarga, which play a key role in Vriddhi, in disease manifestation. Rather, these things are of importance when we retrospectively study a patient at the time of diagnosis particular. Secondly, Kal refers to the staging of life in context with Sadhya Sadhyata. Microcosm is Dosha Kalas or daily regime specific Kal while planning the treatment or drug we need to plan. So this grossly influences and governs the stages and phases of entity called as growth. Relational context, Dusham Desham Kalam we are all aware of. I will not be going into that because unless and until you will not assess the patient in all these 10 modalities, you won't be able to conclude with the further things. Now Prakrut context, Vriddhi, Prakrut context, it is necessary phenomenon and sync with other governing factors. It is a controlled progression. It is equally and simultaneously replicated in every micro Sukshma Srotas at the same time. It is impartial to say that Agni Bala plays a key role. So this all phenomena, normal growth is again covered by, governed by Agni. Aprakrut and Vikrut. What is Aprakrut? Resultant of a metabolism characterizing deficientness and abundance is not in sync with other governing factors like Desh and Kal. It lacks control, hence can be arrested phenomena, that the growth is arrested of particular bhav padartha. So that is, I would say, rather I would club it under Aprakrut, Vriddhi, or different type of expressions. It may be, it exhibit three basic succession patterns like mass frequency, Dravya Guna and Karma. For example, Prameha we can see Keshaloma, Nakati Vriddhi. Aprakrut redistributes the basic available quantum of resources with that particular dhatu in a different manner which is different than what is normally desired. So precipitation of that dhatu, that it is being derived from one place and the depositions are occurring at some other place. So this is again something comes in a category of Aprakrut. It is not simultaneously replicated in every minute unit. It may not be a phenomena which is spread across the entire spectrum of 7 dhatus. Now Vikrut Vriddhi, it is essentially a result of vitiation of doshas and dhatus. It has to be triggered by some extrinsic factors wherein Vat, Pitta or Kapha are going to vitiate. They will manifest with the dusha and take the course of action in a further way. It lacks control and greatly depends on co-vitiating elements, mainly Vayu. Simultaneously exhibits all three basic succession patterns as I mentioned earlier. Example Shot, Granthi, Gulma, Arbut. It does not obey natural sites of expression, that when they say Gulma, when Vayu approaches that particular site, it develops Gulma. But such growths, when they are Vikrut, they may not obey the natural sites of that dhatu, that this growth will be particular in particular that dhatu only. And it's mainly the excessive synthesis of the altered form of corpus exhibiting an altogether different set of properties. Again, Vikrut Vriddhi, we'll be comparing it with an example of Am. What they say ki when Ahara Pachan is not Prakrut and Am is formed, Avilas Tantulas Tyana. This Am is not directly identified as bodily element, bodily content, and it has to be manipulated, or body has to manipulate. Either body stores it somewhere in Sandhi, then some praptis of Amvat and similar take place, or Ajirana and other things takes place. But this is a gross example what I mean by the word corpus. Ki something which is not entertainable or acceptable, assimilable by your body, and which is being produced at the cost of aharas. Now, characterization of this corpus. These are some factors which we are considering. So, Agni plays a key role in manifestation of this. Like in Udar also we Roga Sarvani Sutaram Udarani Cho Mandigno. So, when Agni is compromised somewhere, it gives rise to n number of concurrent activities or chain reactions which can develop definitely the right kind of corpus which is required for manifestation of diseases. So, Agni is something which we need to focus on. The second factor is Ahar, the food that we consume particularly. So, this is the food or Anna Prashosa what Charka has mentioned. I am going to focus on just one line. Dehe prinati gandhadin granadini indriyanicho. This is something which is of importance for us in this context right now. So characterization of basic, what they say is karmantarena api annasya paka sampidate. Dehe prinati gandhadin. The food we say that okay biryani, wow, what a lovely smell. I'm feeling like eating some. So, the portion of Indriyas or portion of Panchamahabhutas, how does it actually take place? So, we know that each Panchamahabhuta has a particular guna in dominance. Like Gandha is a dominant property of Prithvi Mahabhut. Sparsha is a dominant property of Tej Mahabhut. So, while considering all these Mahabhutas, the substances that we are eating, Rasana gives you a knowledge of Madhur, Amla, Lavan, Katu, Tikta, Kashaya, but these factors are subtly nourishing your Mahabhutas and micro elements. Now what happens, why did I mention this? When you are particularly consuming XYZ things, say I'm having ice cream with butterscotch flavor, or I'm not actually smoking but I'm using a tobacco less hookah, but that is with an apple flavor or that is with some different flavor. So these flavors what we are generating, they are not actual Mahabhuta combinations which ideally give rise to that particular kind of smell. You know, upon the first rain we get a typical smell of soil. So this can be fake, this can be mimicked in a perfumery lab. So I mean is that the ingredients which have become a part of our regular diet, the flavoring that we are using, toffees, chocolates and these things, they are subtly interfering at very micro levels, and over a prolonged exposure, such kind of things are surfacing as malignancies or something like that. So somewhere we need to ponder upon these things, that how these things can actually interfere within our system. Now we will be actually discussing the concept of Aharas or the corpus. Now Aharas culminates into Rasa Dhatu, finally provides corpus for Rakta Dhatu, and these collectively comprise basic corpus. Any action, if it has to take place within our system, it has to run down, it has to go through the medium of Rasa and Rakta only, otherwise there is no Gati, there is no other medium mode of transportation for us. So what is the Swarup Ahara Sushruta is mentioned? Pancha Bhautika Seti Prithivyaadi Bhuta Dravya Vedena Shad Rasa Seti Madhura Resna Dvira Vidya Seti Shetoshnadi Virevena. I am keeping this thing aside and I will be focusing on Aneka Guna Seti Shitadi Dravadi Guna Bhedena Vimshati Gunasya. So, sorry, this Ahar is fully saturated or Samprukta with Vimshati Gunas, all the 20 Gurvadi Gunas. How they manifest or how they interfere with each another will be coming up in the next slide. The basic corpus outcome Aharas, the characterization of vitiated dosha, dhatu, malas and other elements grossly influences by Ushna and Shita Guna. None other gunas have this potential, or they hold this potential to effectively alter rest 18 gunas or doshas. Plus the uniqueness about Ushna and Shita Gunas is that they can effectively modulate Murta, Amurta Dravyas, and simultaneously Chetan and Achetan Dravyas at will. Now let's study on other gunas. Ushna, basic action on other gunas. On Guru gunas, it can deplete, it can increase. You can see here that decrease and increase in presence of other factors, periods of exposure and other conditions. Depletion and Mandaguna depletion would be there, Hima depletion would be there. So this depletion is going to enhance or going to build certain set of characteristics in the Ahara Rasa, which is going to be a logical output of that particular course of digestion, which will culminate into further Sapta Dhatus with different Nyayas, with Kale, Kapot, Kshir, Dadi and whatever it is. So when the material which is at the source, which is at the beginning, it is compromised, further things get compromised. Same is the action. Do I need to go through them? Shita Guna, Guru, it will increase. Manda, it will increase. Hima, it will increase. Snigdha, it can deplete or increase depending on the concurrent factors. Shlakshna, again decrease, deplete or increase. Sanda, increase or decrease. Mrudu, decrease, increase. And then Lagu, the other side also I have mentioned the same thing. So final Vruddhi, what is the final basic corpus that we yield is, at this point of journey of progression, the corpus establishes a definite channel and method of expression. Now, as I explained, if a particular substance, like I particularly explain it to my patients who are fond of non-veg, like fish, if we see, fish is something which rottens very fast. Or patients particularly ask, why are you not recommend to eat prawns? Now, if we will see that prawns is a species which is a scavenger, it consumes everything and anything that falls on the at the bottom of the sea. So it is a scavenger, it is not eating a right quality of food, it is stale, it is rotten, it is pungent and whatever all the properties, and it is manifesting and surviving on that, and the body tissues or the body which we consume of that particular shrimp or prawn has been developed on this rotten matter, so it is not capably enough or good enough which will nourish our system. So the source matters a lot. When we go to market, we buy the freshest vegetable, non-veg we buy freshest chicken, or at times we get it slaughtered in front of us and we consume it fresh. Same is with the fish. So the source matters a lot, and that will also matter with the location or target site of expression of the hetus. In particular case, if I will say that there are two patients, and after consumption of peanuts, a patient will experience a Shita Pitta, that there will be swelling on his eye or maybe lip, and the other patient will experience a severe headache. So this depends on the items what they are consuming and other factors which are residing in the system. Now let's understand how this percolates. I have taken an example from Rakta Pitta Chikitsa, because in Rakta Pitta, if you will see, the Charga has mentioned a specific type of corpus which builds. So what they say is, Tair Hetubhi Samutlishtam Pittam Raktam Prapadyate. So with those specific hetus, a particular type of corpus is generated, Samutklishtam Pittam Raktam. So this corpus and Utklishta Pitta reaches or culminates into Pitta. Tad Yonitvat. Why? Because it has a natural affinity towards the Rakta Dhatu. Tad Yonitvat Prapannam cha Vardate and vitiates. Now how does it progress? Image on the right side I have tried to explain is that Tasyoshmana Dravo Dhatuhu Dhator Dhator Prasichate. If we can see, there are multiple sieves which are actually kalas within our system. There are Dhatva Shayantara Maryada Kala, though kalas exist there. So when this corpus reaches as a part of progression till Shukra Dhatu, so it keeps on altering these sieves. Kalas are sieves, they selectively allow the passage of certain ingredients to next dhatu, selectively retain particular dhatus in the earlier dhatu itself, and with the medium which is going to be constantly in contact with these colors, it is going to alter their consistency, hinder their tendency, which eventually will allow passage in both ways, like in either side of movement of this color can take place, and the bhav padarthas which are under consideration, they can have passage throughout the chain of 7 dhatus. So this is how the substance or the corpus can actually manifest and develop into a disease. So far what we discussed is the malignancies, or there are n number of manifestations are there, but a particular kind of malignancy, how it will manifest, whether it will be a adenocarcinoma, whether it will be a sarcoma, whether it will be a lymphoma, greatly depends on the corpus, and the corpus which differs to as with different usage of different hetus which patient is consuming. So assessment of symptoms is going to give you a gross idea about what dhatus are involved, how they were involved, and that can give you a gross picture of the condition. This will help us to build an estimation of the actual condition and the current staging of the disease, that where does the patient land. Because particularly in case of cancer patients, what I have observed is that when we plan treatment of a patient, we need to understand Vyadhi bala and Rugana bala. If I am intending that that patient requires a dose of 100 ml of medicines 3 times a day, but patient's body should be supporting for that kind of dosage, which is not favorable in most of the cases, because most of the cases till the time they come to a Ayurvedic practitioner, they are into either second stage, third stage or fourth stage of the disease. Now what management principles, what I can understand or what I have understood so far, a thorough understanding of Ahar, Vihar and Vyasan. It is not at all necessary, like I mentioned about tobacco. Simple ingredients like methi has an ability to vitiate Pittadhara Kala, Mausadhatu and Grahani. So excessive consumption of methi and allied to that use of tobacco or alcohol can lead to a particular type of manifestation. Cashews and peanuts, it gives you a different kind of manifestation. Viruddhahar will give you a different kind of manifestation. So assess the Ahar and Vyasan properly. Primarily what I prefer in patients of cancer, when Rugana Bala is optimal, always opt for Shodhan modality. Shodhan may not be Sampurna Panchakarma, or kind of what I have implemented is we decide a Rasiyasi Matra or just a little higher Matra than Rasiyasi Matra in particular patient. We administer them with the appropriate Sneha. It could be Mahatiktak, it could be Sarchar Tel, it could be Madan Tel, it could be some, like whatever is the drug of choice, and we employ a treatment therapy of Virechana. We induce Virechana around 4 to 5 Malavegas. We induce on a daily basis, which helps to get rid of lot of like Pachan is there within the system. In between these two, if Rugnabal is Uttam and if required, we can give Rasapachak, Raktapachak or similar, wherever the site of action we are intending, we can employ the dosage of that Pachan Dravya, which separates out those specific doshas, and they can be eliminated with the Virechan which we are employing in the evening. What happens is, evening or at night, when 2-3 Malavegas are there, the patient recovers from the entire thing. There is no fatigue, and this can be simultaneously continued for a period of a month or so, 1.5 months, 2 months also. Sneha dose can be as per the Matra or the Koshta and Agni of the Rugna. Our medicines are not going to directly target the mutated cancer cells. We primarily need to focus on Pathya-Pathya Vichar. It is very mandatory, because the patients which we say generally that 4 years ago cancer was there, we received chemotherapy, radiation was there, and now it has relapsed. Now why it has relapsed? Because no modern oncologist believes that curd can be a potential causative factor for development of cancers, or peanuts, cashews can be a potential factor for cancer. So along with remission of disease, if a Ayurvedic doctor will prescribe, identify the hetus and prescribe him that okay, you are not supposed to consume these things, as these were probably one of the few of the factors for your malignancy from which you have recovered, the chances of remission and longevity would be much better, because we would be adding an entire different set which are not considered as carcinogens but which can favorably build up the necessary corpus. So that is the reason why patient repeatedly develops the same cancer, and it is with a greater force, bala is more, and it spreads in other entities as well. We have been successful in identifying, like I'll be mentioning 2 or 3 drugs which I have found to be of a great help in cases of management. Abrak is something which I use on a larger scale, because in Abrak if you will study, so Abrak Shukra Sanjanan is something which Rasataranganikar has specifically mentioned about Abrak. So Abrak, particularly if the patient is affording, you can implement him with Sahasraputi Abrak. If he is not, you can start with plain Abrak only. Abrak Bhasma, what we prepare in particular cases of malignancy, we prepare it using with Madanfar, because Madanfar to so far of our extent has given excellent results in cases with malignancy. So this Abrak is processed with Madanfar, right from the Mara and Bhavnas are given. Otherwise Sahasraputi Abrak works great. Abrak can be worked as a adjuvant therapy. Basically Sitopaladi, Talisthiti, Avipattikar, these churnas I implement in my practice to give particular gamita to any particular srotas, or narrate the action of my drug to any particular targeted dhatu or delivery system. This is how I look upon these things. Dosage should be Vyadhi. The maximum highest dose what I have used is around 500 grams, 4 to 5 times in a day. You have to make sure that Abrak is Nishchandra. It gives you much better results, particularly in lower cadres, like when the doshas are in Rasa, Rakta, Med and Shukra. Rasa particularly more. In Rasa, in Abrak, we use one more thing, like the concept is of Chausashta Pimpli, what everybody knows. So we have prepared like the same, on the same lines, Marich is given, Bhavnas of Marich Kwat, and we call it as Siddha Marich. And it proves to be an excellent medicine in Pachan of Kled, Abhishanda, and whatever system, wherever you need to have Pachan activity, 20-25 milligram of this medicine that can be tagged with Rasapachak, with Raktapachak, and it will exhibit that proper action in that dhatu, because the number of bhavnas which we implement there add that tikshnata and sukshmata to the marich. Marich in itself is a pramathi dravya. So this is how we try to deliver the entities at a proper target. Secondly, what I have experienced is Raupya. Raupya is something, Rajat can be used in both the manners. Like if you are not confident about the quality of Bhasma, simply ask patient to buy a silver leaf, which generally go on mithais, but you can buy silver leaves, mix it with the desired Gruta or Avleha Kalpana, whatever you are giving. Like for particular patients who have manifestations resulting from Viruddhar, I use Panchagavya Gruta. So Panchagavya and 1, 2 or 3 silver leaves, or even Swarana leaves, gold leaves, Swarana Varkha, mix them and administer them throughout the day. So there is no need to go for Swarana Bhasma as well. We can directly in Swarana and Raupya, we have this liberty that we can use it Swarana Patra or Raupya Patra. Hartal is something which in Siddha they call it as Pashanas. But Hartal is something which I have experienced that it enhances the targeted activity or targeted delivery of your medicine in a much shorter span of time and in a much smaller dosage. So Hartal is to be done preferably including during Maran. Like I said, in case of Abrak we use in Madanfar. So in particular cases where Majja Dhatu is at affliction, could be of any diseases. I'm not targeting particularly as any cancer right now. But when it is to be targeted for use on Majja Dhatu, we do the Maran with use of Hartal. Though it may be a Adam Maran method, but Hartal gives a targeted activity in case of Raupya. This is what I have observed. Hirak and Swarna, they are restorative, regenerative, and their rasayan potential is great. They actively control sampraptis in the dusha itself, because apunarbhavatva is a part which is of a key role, that at times patient approaches you as ki, I have recovered from XYZ malignancy, chemo and everything is gone, but I want to make sure, or I want that this should not be the case down the line 3, 4, 5 years. So Hirak Rasayan, Vajra Rasayan, these things can be implemented for these patients on a regular basis and in a continued manner. They have done it for 30 days and okay, Rasayan is over, it is not like that. So they have to be prescribed in a continuing manner. It restores tendency to regrow and reoccurrence. Hirak Swarna are best strengthening agents and referred as Ati Rasayanas. Now, this is the last slide of my presentation, wherein I would like to do appeal for researchers or MD students, PhD students who particularly take up new subjects. That Rashastra, the science of mercury, is a vast science, and what all we are exploring right now, we are just playing till the limits of Bhasma only. We are not exceeding to a concepts which are higher. Max to max what we are using is Shadgun Jarit Parad or Shadgun Jarit Rasa Sindur, wherein you are incorporating 6 times the volume of sulfur in Gandak. I had taken a trial and could succeed till 25 times of Gandak. I could do Jarana with Gandak, with Parad. So effort should be made in such a way that Shatagun Gandak Jarana is there, or Bija Sankalpanas are there, or jaranas of different metals and minerals in Parada should be done, and effectively these molecules should be employed in management of such critical or such conditions which are relatively difficult to treat with simpler medicines, so that drug delivery can be faster, quicker, and with more amount of promising results. So such things should be taken for research in near future. I think I have shared my thoughts about the concept of malignancies. It was not typically, we did not discuss any particular type as in yet, but rather than background which goes in, why the manifestations are in different way. So please, I would like to have your feedbacks, and thank you for a patient listening. Namaste.